John has been writing to them about the Antichrist, and now he's affectionately wanting to talk to them about when that moment happens, when Jesus comes and appears. So he says, listen, if you want to have confidence, if you don't want to shrink away in shame, if you want to be scared and terrified in that moment, here is where we need to go. So number one, confidence comes from first, number one, remaining in Him. We talked about this last week. We're going to talk about it some more now. Remaining in Him. 1 John 2:28 through 29 says this, "And now, little children, abide in Him, so that when He appears, we may have confidence and not shrink back from Him in shame at His coming." I said this last week. I said the number one way that we abide in Jesus, these are Jesus' words, is that we are obedient. He says, if you obey my commandments, you abide in my love. It's the words of Jesus. We are obedient. Now, how do we know that this is what He's talking about? How do we know that when He says being obedient is how we know that you won't shrink back in shame at His coming? I want to take you on a journey with me just for a little bit. This should not be new to anybody in this room, I don't think. But Genesis chapter 3, the beginning of creation of the story, goes like this. God the Father is there, God the Son is there, the Trinity, the entire Godhead is there on this planet. And He says to Adam and Eve, all this is yours. You have complete and utter freedom to eat what you want, to cultivate, to do these things that I've invited you to do. Here's the one restriction I'm putting on you. Do not eat from this tree right here. That's it. You have complete freedom. The only thing I'm asking is respect my authority, respect my position as your God when I tell you, don't eat from this one tree right here. Well, what happens? The adversary comes along as a serpent, tempts them. Adam and Eve, they eat the fruit, and immediately they feel shame. So the Bible says that God began to walk in the garden like He typically did with them, and when He walked, what did they do? They went and they hid. This is not new to us. It is the normal thing. Why did they hide? Because they had been disobedient. What prevents us from that shame and keeps us in the confidence? It's our obedience. But here's where I don't want to get it mixed up or messed up either. I don't want us to think that it's simply by obedience alone that was what Adam and Eve's big issue was. You see, you got to go back and get a little bit deeper in the story. Because the serpent came along and said this to them, listen, if you eat from this fruit, you can be like God. You won't need Him anymore. You don't have His authority in your life. You can be God. That was the temptation that was there. It was saying you can be completely independent from Him and His rules and that you don't need Him. Now, here's what abiding looks like. It's obedience, but it's obedience that is really dependence. Look at what John 6:56 says. These are Jesus' words. Whoever feeds on my flesh and drinks my blood abides in me and I in him. Now that seems like a very strange passage. That seemed like a very strange thing to say. There were people that were following him. He gets up and says, here's how you're going to really abide with me. You're going to eat my flesh and drink my blood. And the Bible says at that point, some people left. Some people said, this is not for me. I don't know what's going on here. I'm going to walk away because he's talking about eating flesh and drinking blood. Jesus always spoke in parables to the people. And what He was trying to get them to see was that we need to be dependent upon Him for everything. That's where we get our food. It's where we get our drink. He's saying, listen, this is what He's talking about. That grace, that mercy, that life, every single piece of it there is speaking to dependence. And so the key to remaining close, the key to abiding is dependence.